First time I met him was, I have a good friend who will be here tonight. His name is Brad. He is a Blackberry Smoke fan and was a friend of Merle's. And we were talking much like you and I are now. And he asked if I ever met him. And I said no. And he said, well, he's going to be playing in Atlanta at the Buckhead Theater, which was it was half a mile from my house at the time. And I was like, I kind of was waiting for it. And here it came. He was like, you want to come meet him? I was like, yes, I do. And so he allowed me to come. And Frank was Merle's tour manager at the time. Very lovely gentleman. I think he'd been in that position for decades, but he was very, very sweet and brought us back. And my son was, I think, 2 at the time. Took him in there and got to watch sound check. And Merle, he had heard our version of Yesterday's Wine with George. And so he said, I like that. Good job. I said, thanks, man. He was very, very soft-spoken and not as talkative as I had hoped he would be, but very, very nice. Not as talkative as George. It wasn't really silence. We just hung out for a minute, and I introduced him to my wife and son, and then they sound checked, and then he was like, I hope you enjoy the show. I said, okay. And then I saw him one more time the next year in Carrollton, Georgia, in the outdoor show there. Just a similar, good to see you.
Did you see the sound check?
Yes.
Was it I've heard that he would play for a long time and just want to jam in sound checks.
He did at the Buckhead Theater, which is a great venue. It's the old Roxy in Atlanta. And he played through 2, I think they were Bandmaster type tweed amps, kind of canked in toward him, and they were loud as hell. And I remember thinking, yes, I love that. Because, we see people go the way of quiet, and quiet music is boring. It sucks. So I was glad he's old school, and he was a great guitar player. I think maybe a lot of people don't realize that because he always had, Roy Nichols playing in his band. And Ben is a fantastic guitar player too, but Merle would take solos, that Tough Dog Telly, and very jazzy, but really an unsung guitar hero.
Did he still have his voice?
He did. Yeah, he sang really, really well. And I forget what he said that night, and I have used it in my ministry. He made a joke about not being able to dance. God, what was it? It was really clever and brilliant, and I'm sure he had used it many times, but it was a really good, you're not allowed to dance here, apparently, kind of joke. My old buddy from Carrollton, Georgia, Zach Steed, his dad told me once, because I'll do acoustic shows every year, Benji and I, and, it gets chatty, and it sucks. And there's nothing you can do. You can't stop it. And if you do, you're a dick, if you call somebody out. And so they were a bluegrass band called Bullsboro. And if they played a quiet one, it would get chatty. And Zach's dad, Mike, who is deceased, and he was a great man, he said, I always say, you know what? We can play quieter so y'all don't have to talk as loud. And I said, that's brilliant. And he said, you're welcome to use that in your ministry, son. Man, it's a little more all over the place with Merle. The Roots Volume 1 record, I love that one. That Bluegrass Sessions that he did with Marty Stewart, and is Mike Bubb on that maybe? Can't remember. Maybe. It's really good. That very first stuff, Sing a Sad Song and all that, that's great too. But it was like these bursts of genius that he had all throughout these decades. And I can't keep track the different labels that he worked with, but like the Capitol stuff is great. But then later the stuff that's like Always on a Mountain When I Fall and Red Bandana and all that, I don't know if that was RCA or whatever, but it's like a different artist almost. Like he's changing with the times, but remaining Merle Haggard. We used to drive around in the van and listen to, before iPods, I had a bag of CDs, like a grocery bag that was just like ripping at the seams full of CDs. And I remember listening to, it was like one of those best of Merle Haggard, and it had, I think I'll Just Stay Here and Drink, I think was the first song on it. And I remember Britt, we laughed about how you get through that song and there's a great guitar solo, and then maybe there's piano, and then there's a sax solo. And we laughed about, I'm like, how many rednecks around this country were like, get their beer like, you know, like, what the hell is that? You know? And then there's it's got that groove that's like that halftime groove, and the drummer just goes around the kit. And I didn't know, I'm not a drummer, but I was just like, that's ridiculous. And he goes, what's ridiculous is those electronic drums that the toms, it's like he's playing Panama. What are you doing? Yeah, he had a great saxophonist that night at the show, Buckhead Theater. But I knew that, so it wasn't the spit your beer out moment.
And Merle loved Dixieland.
Yeah.
I wanted some of that, and I get it.
Yeah. I wonder if he and Willie were like, if that was common ground with them. Because obviously Waylon, that wasn't his bag. But it was theirs. And they both had that kind of guitar playing that sort of lent itself to that.
He posted on Instagram a picture of a Jerry Lee Lewis country album that just happened to be, it's probably the album I've listened to more than anything else in my life.
Yeah.
Because it was Jerry Lee was my dad's favorite, and he loved the country stuff.
Yes. I really felt kinship with you and Kenny Vaughan talking about Jerry Lee being the greatest, like second only to George Jones. His vocals on those country records, they're just unstoppable. It's so natural. I can't even describe it. It's like, why does it sound so much fucking easier for him than it does everybody else? It's like it's effortless.
He's a pure instrument in every way.
Yeah.
I agreed, if my memory serves me right, Kenny said something to the effect of George Jones is the greatest country singer of all time. Jerry Lee's his favorite.
Yeah, that's it.
And I kind of, I agree with that.
Yeah. Not cheesy at all. It's like anything he said, obviously because he's like saying shit about himself between verses, like over somebody's solo.
Oh, that's the killer, baby.
That's right. One of my favorites is, play your little instrumental lick there, son. Like, what? Okay. And even it doesn't, I'm like, somehow that's not ridiculous. It sounds right at home. It sounds appropriate. I mean, I was trying to explain to my youngest son, we're talking about, he loves Little Richard and Elvis, and he's a very musical little guy. And so I was just playing him my favorite singers, just because he's getting into singing so much. And I'm like, he's not ready to hear Europe 72, The Dead yet, you know, he's not ready. But he's ready for Jailhouse Rock and Lucille and all this stuff, you know, Great Balls of Fire. I'm like, the Little Richard, like Lucille, he's like, whoa. And I remember having the exact same reaction as a kid, like, that's extreme. Like, the way that man is singing is extreme. It's not like I have heard in church or how my dad sings around the house. It's exciting and a little scary. And I was telling, I don't know, I didn't explain it like this to my 10-year-old son, but I'm like, those dudes were all like wild people, you know. That's why they started this thing, you know. Elvis was a wild dude, you know. And of course, Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee were, because it's even a little more obvious with them, like the trouble they got in. But they were fearless. They'd have to be. And they couldn't be normal and easy, you know, or boring, or we wouldn't have a reason to be talking right now.